My name is Megan Brooks. I'm 32 years old, and for the past 9 years, I've worked as a forensic accounting consultant in Boston, the kind of person companies call when money disappears and nobody wants to admit where it went. I built my career tracing hidden transfers, fake invoices, shell accounts, and financial lies, but nothing prepared me for the email my own mother sent me at 6:17 on a Monday morning. The subject line was simple: "Enjoy your new life." I opened it while standing in my kitchen, still half awake, one hand around a mug of black coffee, expecting another guilt trip about why I never helped enough. Instead, I read, "Your brother and I took your $450,000 savings and moved to Paris. Enjoy being broke." For a second, I didn't breathe. I read it again, slower, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. They didn't. Attached was a photo of my mother in sunglasses outside a Paris cafe, smiling like she had won a prize, and beside her stood my brother, Tyler Brooks, holding a glass of champagne he could never have afforded. Under the photo, she wrote one more line: "Maybe now you'll learn money doesn't make you better than family." My fingers went cold. The coffee slipped from my hand and shattered across the floor, but I didn't move. Because what my mother didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that not every account they touched belonged to me. And when the real owners started asking questions, Paris stopped looking like a dream and became a trap. Before I tell you what happened when they called in panic asking, "Whose accounts were those?" tell me, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels. I didn't scream. That was the strange part. I didn't cry, didn't throw my phone, didn't call my mother back begging for an explanation. I stood in that kitchen with broken ceramic around my bare feet and felt something inside me go painfully still. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the part of me that had spent years investigating other people's fraud finally realizing I was looking at a case file with my own last name on it. I stepped over the coffee, sat at my dining table, opened my laptop, and logged into every financial dashboard I had. The first account was empty, the second had been drained. The third showed a wire transfer I had never authorized, routed through a temporary business account with a name so ridiculous it almost made me laugh. Brooks Family Holdings. My family had created a fake company using our last name, as if theft became respectable once it had a corporate label. The deeper I looked, the colder I became. There were transfers from my personal savings, yes, but also movement from an escrow account tied to a confidential investigation I had been managing for one of my clients, a medical technology firm that had hired me to trace embezzled research funds. That account had strict legal restrictions. It was monitored. It was insured. And most importantly, it was never mine to give, spend, or lose. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred, not from tears, but from the sick realization that my mother and brother had not just stolen from me. They had stepped into a financial crime they were too arrogant to understand. Then the memories began snapping into place. Tyler asking last month, "So, do you keep all your money in one bank?" My mother suddenly insisting she needed my old laptop to print recipes while visiting my apartment. Her pretending to be offended when I refused to discuss my client work. Tyler joking that my job sounded easy because rich people just hand you passwords. I had dismissed all of it as ignorance. Now every casual question looked like a lockpick. I opened my password manager and saw a login from an unfamiliar device 2 nights earlier, then another from an IP address connected to a short-term rental in New Jersey. My stomach twisted. They had not acted on impulse. They had planned this. For 6 minutes, I almost called my mother. I even opened her contact and hovered my thumb over the button. Some broken childlike part of me wanted to hear her say it was a mistake, that someone had hacked her, that she was scared, that she was sorry. But then another email arrived from Tyler. No subject. Just one sentence. Don't try to play Detective Meg. You lost. I stared at that line and something ancient inside me snapped. I screenshotted everything. I downloaded statements. I copied metadata. I saved the emails in 3 places. Then I called my best friend, Natalie Parker, who answered on the second ring and immediately knew something was wrong because I said her name instead of hello. When I told her, she didn't gasp dramatically or tell me to calm down. She said, "Megan, do not call them. Do not warn them. Build the file." That was why Natalie was my person. She knew me well enough to know I didn't need comfort first. I needed a clean battlefield. By noon, my kitchen was still covered in dried coffee, but my dining table had become an evidence board. Bank statements on the left, device logs in the center, email headers on the right. I contacted the bank's fraud department, then my firm's legal compliance officer, then the client whose escrow funds might have been touched. Every call made my voice steadier. Every document made the betrayal less emotional and more provable. Around 3, my mother finally called. I let it ring. She called again. Then Tyler. Then my mother again. By the 5th call, she left a voicemail, her voice sharp and annoyed, not guilty. "Megan, don't be dramatic. We're in Paris. We're finally happy. You should be happy for us." I played it twice, not because I enjoyed the pain, but because I wanted to remember her tone. She didn't sound like a mother who had stolen her daughter's future. She sounded like a woman irritated that her victim might complain. That night, Natalie came over with food I couldn't eat, and a notebook I could use. She sat across from me while I wrote down every strange comment, every suspicious visit, every moment I had ignored because I wanted to believe family couldn't be that cruel. At 11:48 p.m., an automated fraud alert appeared from the escrow bank. High-risk international transfer under review. I clicked it open. My pulse slowed. Not raced, slowed. Because for the first time that day, I understood the truth. My mother and brother thought they had robbed me and escaped to Paris, but what they had really done was pull a fire alarm in a building full of investigators, lawyers, auditors, and federal compliance officers, and they were standing in the lobby, holding the match. The next morning, I met with Rebecca Hayes, a financial crimes attorney recommended by my firm's compliance director. Her office overlooked the harbor, but I barely noticed the view. I carried a folder so thick the receptionist glanced at it twice, probably assuming I was another consultant delivering paperwork, not a daughter walking in with proof that her own mother had emptied her accounts. Rebecca was calm in a way that made the room feel colder. She didn't interrupt while I explained the stolen savings, the fake company, the unauthorized device access, the Paris withdrawals, and the possible contamination of the escrow account. She only asked short questions, each one sharper than the last. Who had physical access to your laptop? Did your mother know your security questions? Did your brother ever receive mail at your address? Were any client funds actually transferred out, or only accessed? By the time she finished, my hands were clenched under the table. Then she leaned back and said, "Megan, I need you to understand something. This is not just a family dispute. If your evidence is accurate, this is identity theft, wire fraud, conversion of funds, and possibly attempted theft from a protected escrow account." The words should have frightened me. Instead, they made me feel like the floor had finally stopped moving. I had spent 24 hours wondering if I was being too harsh, too cold, too unwilling to forgive. Rebecca's sentence cut through that fog. This was not drama. This was crime. Still, she warned me that family cases were ugly because thieves with shared DNA often expected emotional immunity. "They will call you cruel," she said. "They will say you chose money over family. They will try to make you feel responsible for the consequences of their choices." I almost laughed because she had described my mother perfectly. Susan Brooks had built her entire motherhood around debt disguised as love. When I was 16, she borrowed my summer job money to keep the lights on, then bought Tyler a gaming console the next week because he needed a win. When I was 21, she cried until I co-signed a small loan for her, then missed 3 payments and told me bad credit would teach me humility. When I graduated, she hugged me in front of relatives and whispered, "Don't forget who sacrificed for you." Even though I had paid my own tuition with scholarships and weekend bookkeeping jobs. For years, she had trained me to confuse guilt with duty. Now she had simply scaled up the lesson to $450,000. Rebecca listened as I told her those memories, not because they were legally necessary, but because they explained why I had ignored so many warnings. She nodded once and said, "Manipulation often starts small. People don't steal $500,000 from someone unless they have already practiced stealing boundaries." That sentence stayed with me. We prepared emergency filings the same day: fraud reports, bank disputes, preservation letters, a temporary restraining order against further account activity, and a civil complaint naming Susan Brooks and Tyler Brooks as defendants. Rebecca also contacted the escrow bank's legal department to separate my personal loss from the client's protected funds, proving I had reported the issue immediately and had not authorized any movement. That part mattered. My career depended on trust, and my mother had put her hands not only around my money, but around my name. By evening, the first freeze went through. The fake Brooks Family Holdings account was locked. 2 international cards linked to it were suspended. A luxury apartment booking in Paris failed payment authorization. I knew because Tyler texted me 20 minutes later. "What did you do?" I didn't answer. Then my mother sent a photo from a restaurant: white tablecloth, gold lighting, tiny plates arranged like jewelry, with the message, "You can freeze cards, but you can't freeze family. Stop embarrassing yourself." I forwarded it to Rebecca. She replied with 3 words: "Excellent. More evidence." That became my rhythm. They insulted me. I archived it. They threatened me. I timestamped it. They posted vacation pictures. I saved them. On social media, they pretended Paris was a fresh start. My mother captioned one photo, "Finally free from toxic people." Tyler posted, "Some of us know how to enjoy life instead of hoarding money." Their friends liked the posts. A cousin commented, "So happy for you." I stared at that comment longer than I should have, realizing my family had probably told everyone I was selfish, unstable, maybe even abusive. For one painful hour, I wanted to defend myself publicly. I wanted to post screenshots, statements, proof. Natalie talked me out of it. "Let the court be your comment section," she said. So I stayed silent. Not weak silent, strategic silent. The kind of silence that lets arrogant people keep talking until they bury themselves. 3 days later, Rebecca called with the first twist. "Megan," she said, "they attempted a second transfer after the freeze." My mother and brother, apparently furious that their cards stopped working, had tried to move another block of money through the fake company into a French banking app using my stolen identity documents. But because the fraud alerts were active, the transaction triggered a compliance review. The bank now had them on record attempting to access restricted funds after formal dispute notices had been filed. "That's bad for them," Rebecca said. I looked at the family photo on my bookshelf, the one where my mother had her arms around both of us at a 4th of July barbecue years ago. For the first time, I didn't feel sadness when I looked at it. I felt recognition. That picture was not proof of love. It was proof that sometimes the people smiling beside you are only waiting for the right moment to take what you built. The first real confrontation came 4 days after the freeze, at 2:03 a.m. my time, when my mother called 11 times in a row. I finally answered on the 12th because Rebecca had told me recorded calls could matter if my state's consent rules were followed, and Natalie was sitting beside me with her laptop open, ready to take notes. My mother didn't say hello. She hissed, "Do you have any idea what you've done?" For a moment, I almost admired the audacity. She had stolen my savings, fled the country, mocked me in writing, and now she sounded wounded because consequences had arrived earlier than expected. I asked, "Are you calling to return the money?" She laughed, but it cracked in the middle. "Return it? Megan, don't be childish. That money was sitting there doing nothing. Tyler needed a reset. I needed peace. You have always had more than us." I looked at Natalie, who closed her eyes like she was physically holding back rage. "You stole from me," I said. My mother's voice sharpened. "You abandoned us first. You moved to Boston, got your fancy job, started acting like you were above your own blood. You think because you understand spreadsheets, you understand life? Family shares. Family asks," I said. "Thieves take." That was when Tyler grabbed the phone. I heard street noise behind him, then his breathless anger. "You're ruining everything, Meg. The apartment manager is threatening to kick us out because the payment bounced. Mom cried all day because of you." "Good," I said, and the word surprised even me. Not because I didn't mean it, but because I meant it completely. Tyler went silent for half a second, then spat. "You always were selfish. Enjoy your lonely little life with your numbers." Then he said the sentence that erased the last soft corner of my heart. "You should be grateful we only took money." Natalie's head snapped up. I repeated, "What does that mean?" He hung up. I sent the call summary to Rebecca immediately. By morning, my phone was flooded. My Aunt Denise texted, "Your mother says you stranded them overseas." A cousin wrote, "Whatever happened, don't involve police. She's still your mom." Someone else sent a Bible verse about forgiveness. Not one person asked what she had done. Not one asked why my mother was in Paris with my stolen money. That was the second betrayal. The chorus of people who preferred a quiet victim over an exposed criminal. I answered no one. Rebecca advised restraint. Natalie advised stronger language, but admitted Rebecca was probably right. Over the next week, Susan and Tyler's messages became less arrogant and more desperate. First, Susan claimed the money was a family emergency fund. Then she claimed I had verbally promised it to her. Then she said I was mentally unstable and had forgotten. Tyler sent screenshots of declined transactions like I was customer support. "Card dead again," he wrote. "Fix it." When I ignored him, he sent a selfie from outside a closed bank branch in Paris with the caption, "Hope you're proud." I was. Not loudly, not cruelly. But yes, I was proud that for once in my life, I had not rushed to rescue people who were drowning in a pool they filled themselves. The panic call from the Hook came on a Thursday. I was at Rebecca's office reviewing affidavits when my phone lit up with Tyler's name. I put it on speaker. His voice was thin, almost childish. "Whose accounts were those?" Rebecca's pen stopped moving. I asked, "What are you talking about?" My mother was crying in the background. Tyler said, "The bank people said some of the money wasn't yours. They said legal department. They said corporate escrow. What the hell did you do, Megan?" I leaned back slowly. There it was. The moment arrogance met vocabulary it could not bully. "I didn't do anything," I said. "You accessed accounts you didn't understand." My mother came on the line, sobbing now. "Megan, listen to me. We didn't know. We thought it was all yours." Rebecca wrote something on a yellow legal pad and turned it toward me. "Do not explain." I followed it. "You need an attorney," I said. My mother's crying stopped instantly. "How can you say that to me?" "Easily," I replied. "You need an attorney." She began pleading then, switching masks so fast I could almost hear them drop. First anger. You ungrateful little monster. Then guilt. I gave birth to you. Then fear. They said there could be charges. Then manipulation. If you loved me, you would fix this. The old Megan might have broken at that sentence. The old Megan might have apologized for bleeding on the knife. But the woman sitting in that office had spent the past week reading proof. I did love you, I said. That was never the problem. The problem is, you thought love made me easy to rob. I ended the call. My hands trembled afterward, but not from weakness. They trembled because I had finally closed a door my mother had spent my whole life keeping half open with guilt. The days before the hearing felt less like waiting and more like watching a storm choose a direction. Rebecca filed for emergency civil relief, the banks completed their internal reviews, and my client's legal team confirmed that no protected funds had permanently left the escrow structure, though the attempted access had been documented and referred for further investigation. That saved my career, but it did not soften the damage. I still had to explain to my firm why my stolen identity had been used in an attempt to touch client-linked accounts. I sat in a glass conference room with two partners, a compliance officer, and an HR representative, while they asked careful, formal questions that made me feel both supported and exposed. I answered everything. I showed timelines. I showed the police report. I showed Rebecca's filings. At the end, one partner, a quiet man named Daniel Mercer, closed the folder and said, "Megan, you did exactly what you were supposed to do." I held myself together until I reached the elevator. Then I cried. Not because I was weak, but because being believed after betrayal feels almost as overwhelming as the betrayal itself. Natalie met me downstairs and walked with me through the cold Boston air without trying to fix anything. That was her gift. She knew when silence was kinder than advice. Meanwhile, Paris was collapsing for Susan and Tyler. The luxury apartment canceled their extended booking after the frozen payment. The restaurant charges were reversed pending investigation. Their French banking app locked them out. Tyler's employer, a regional sales company back in Ohio, learned he had left the country without approval while pretending to work remotely from home. He was fired by email, which felt poetic in a way I tried not to enjoy too much. My mother's church friends began asking why she had suddenly moved overseas when she had told everyone she was helping Megan through a breakdown. A relative finally called me, not to accuse me, but to ask quietly, "Is it true she took your money?" I sent no screenshots, no dramatic explanation, only Rebecca's public filing number. Within 24 hours, the family narrative began to rot from the inside. People who had scolded me for not forgiving her stopped texting. Aunt Denise sent one message. I didn't know. I didn't reply because an apology that arrives only after evidence is not courage. It is damage control. 7 days before court, Tyler tried intimidation. He emailed, "Drop this or I'll tell everyone what you're really like." I forwarded it. 5 days before court, my mother tried illness. She left a voicemail whispering that stress had made her chest hurt and that if anything happened to her, I would have to live with it. I forwarded that too. 3 days before court, she tried nostalgia. She emailed a scanned birthday card I had made her when I was 8. In purple crayon, I had written, "Mommy, I love you forever." Under the image, she typed, "Was this a lie?" I stared at it for a long time. That one hurt. Not because it changed anything, but because I remembered the little girl who had meant every word. I remembered believing my mother was safety. I remembered running to her after nightmares, trusting her hands to push the fear away. Then I looked at the bank statements beside me and realized grief can exist beside truth, without canceling it. I wrote back only once. "The child who made that card loved you. The adult you stole from is taking you to court." Rebecca approved the message before I sent it. The next day, we received the evidence that changed everything. A subpoenaed record from the fake company account showed a note attached to one of the transfers. Tyler had written it himself. Move before Meg notices. 4 words. No confusion, no misunderstanding, no family emergency, just intent. Rebecca called it a gift. I called it a confession with bad spelling. Even better, there was a message from my mother to Tyler sent 2 days before the theft. Once we are in Paris, she can yell all she wants. She won't be able to afford a fight. I read that sentence 3 times. Each reading removed another ounce of guilt from my body. She had not stolen because she was desperate. She had stolen because she believed financial ruin would silence me. The hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. On Sunday night, Natalie stayed over. We ate takeout on the floor because my dining table was buried under legal binders. Around midnight, she asked, "Are you scared?" I said yes, because I was. Not scared of losing the case exactly, but scared of seeing my mother across a courtroom and realizing there was nothing left between us but evidence. Natalie nodded and said, "Then be scared and go anyway." That became my final thought before sleep. Courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was walking into the room with fear beside you and refusing to hand it the microphone. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. In my mind, justice should have had marble columns, echoing footsteps, and dramatic lighting. In reality, it had beige walls, a humming air vent, and a judge who looked tired before anyone spoke. Susan and Tyler appeared by video from a legal office in Paris, which made the whole thing feel unreal, like my family had been reduced to 2 faces trapped in a screen. My mother wore pearls, because of course she did. Tyler wore a wrinkled dress shirt, and the expression of a man who had recently discovered charm was not a legal strategy. Rebecca sat beside me with our evidence binder, calm as a blade. The bank's attorney was there. A representative from my client's escrow institution was there. My firm's compliance officer sat in the back. That, I think, was when my mother finally understood this was not a private family argument she could smother with tears. There were too many professionals in the room, too many records, too many people who did not care that she had given birth to me. Rebecca opened by laying out the timeline: unauthorized access, false company creation, identity misuse, personal savings drained, attempted contact with restricted escrow-linked funds, international spending, and continued attempts after fraud notices. She did not raise her voice once. She didn't need to. Facts have a sound of their own when arranged correctly. My mother's attorney tried to argue confusion. He said Susan believed the funds were shared family resources. Rebecca showed the email. Enjoy being broke. He argued Tyler did not understand the accounts. Rebecca showed move before Meg notices. He argued there had been no malicious intent. Rebecca showed my mother's message. She won't be able to afford a fight. The judge's face changed after that. Not dramatically. Just enough. A tightening around the mouth. A pause before the next note. Then my mother was allowed to speak. She leaned toward the camera, eyes wet, voice trembling in the exact tone that had once made me fold instantly. Your Honor, I am a mother. I made mistakes, but I was trying to help my son. Megan has always been successful. She has everything. Tyler has struggled. I thought, as a family, we could balance things. Balance. That was the word she chose for theft. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but Rebecca touched my wrist under the table, grounding me. The judge asked my mother whether I had given written permission to use the funds. Susan looked down. Not written, no. Verbal? He asked. She hesitated. As her mother, I believed. That is not what I asked, the judge said. The silence afterward was the first honest thing my mother had given me in years. Then Tyler spoke, which was a mistake. He said, Look, Megan is making this bigger than it is. She's always been dramatic about money. We were going to pay her back once things settled. Rebecca stood. With what income, Mr. Brooks? Tyler blinked. Excuse me? You had been terminated from your job, correct? His face flushed. That happened because of this. Because you left the country while misrepresenting your work location, correct? He looked away. Rebecca continued. And before termination, your savings balance was under $2,000, correct? Tyler muttered something. The judge told him to answer. Yes. So when you say you intended to pay back $450,000, plus fees, plus possible damages, what specific repayment plan existed? Tyler had no answer. My mother began crying harder. For years, her tears had been emergency sirens in my nervous system. That day, they sounded like weather outside a locked window. Then Rebecca asked permission for me to make a statement. I stood, and for one terrifying second, my body forgot how to breathe. I looked at the screen, at my mother's pearls, at Tyler's resentment, at the people waiting for my pain to become language. I loved my family, I began. That is why this worked for so long. Not because I was careless, but because I trusted people who knew exactly how to use trust against me. My mother did not ask for help. My brother did not make a mistake. They planned to take my money, leave the country, and leave me too broke to fight back. They were wrong. My voice steadied. I am not here because I hate them. I am here because love without accountability becomes permission for abuse. I want my funds restored. I want my name protected. And I want the record to show that being someone's daughter does not make me their bank. The courtroom went quiet. My mother covered her face. Tyler stared down. The judge recessed for 20 minutes, and those 20 minutes felt longer than the entire month before them. When he returned, he granted the emergency relief. My personal funds were to be restored through available frozen assets, reversed transfers, and liquidation of property Susan had used as collateral. The fake company would remain locked pending further proceedings. The attempted access to escrow-linked funds would be referred to the appropriate investigative authorities. Susan and Tyler were ordered to preserve all financial records and surrender control of accounts connected to the transfers. And then came the part that made Tyler finally look afraid. Because they had spent a large portion of the stolen money, the court authorized liens against my mother's house in Ohio and Tyler's remaining assets to secure repayment and damages. My mother gasped. My house? The judge looked directly at the screen. You used stolen funds to finance an international relocation while attempting to prevent the plaintiff from seeking legal remedy. The court is not persuaded by your claim of innocent misunderstanding. That sentence broke something in her. Not her heart, maybe, but her performance. Her face hardened, and for a second the mask slipped completely. After everything I did for her, she whispered. The microphone caught it. Everyone heard. And just like that, even her grief became evidence. The aftermath was not as clean as people imagine victory will be. There was no music swelling when I walked out of the courthouse. No sudden peace, no magical feeling that my childhood had been repaired because a judge agreed with me. I stepped into the hallway, sat on a bench, and shook so hard Natalie wrapped both arms around me without saying a word. I had won. Yes. My money would be recovered through frozen funds, insurance processes, reversed transfers, and liens. My career was safe. My name was cleared. My mother and brother could no longer call the theft a misunderstanding without contradicting a legal record. But I had also lost the final illusion that family automatically meant safety. In the weeks that followed, consequences spread through Susan and Tyler's lives like cracks through glass. Tyler could not get rehired in his field once the civil filings and termination details surfaced. Friends who had cheered his Paris photos stopped answering his messages. My mother returned from France quietly, not glamorous anymore, Not triumphant, just angry and smaller somehow. Her house, the one she had always called the family home, was placed under a lien. She tried to sell jewelry, then furniture, then the story that I had ruined her life. But stories do not pay judgments. Sympathy does not unlock frozen accounts. And guilt, for once, could not be converted into cash. Some relatives tried to come back to me once the truth became undeniable. Aunt Denise sent a long apology saying she should have asked questions before judging me. A cousin invited me to Thanksgiving as if a holiday meal could cover the smell of betrayal. I thanked no one for finally believing evidence. Maybe that sounds cold, but there is a special exhaustion in being asked to appreciate people who only stop hurting you when proof makes denial embarrassing. My mother emailed me one final time 3 months after the hearing. The subject line was, "Please." I almost deleted it unread, but some part of me needed to know which version of her had survived the wreckage. The email was shorter than I expected. Megan, I don't know how we became this. I miss my daughter. I made choices I regret. Tyler is angry. I am tired. I wish we could go back. There was no full confession. No clear apology for stealing. No acknowledgement that she had tried to leave me broke and powerless. Just regret. Soft and shapeless. The kind that wants comfort without accountability. I read it twice. Then I opened a blank reply and typed, "We cannot go back because the person I was back then no longer exists. I hope you become honest someday, but I will not be part of your life while you learn." I sent it, blocked her email, and sat in silence for a long time. I did forgive her eventually, but not in the way people usually mean. I did not forgive her by inviting her back. I did not forgive Tyler by pretending he was only lost. I forgave them by refusing to let their betrayal become the center of my life. I forgave them by sleeping peacefully again, by checking my accounts without shaking, by laughing with Natalie over terrible coffee, by taking new clients, by buying a small condo with locks only I controlled and a dining table that was not covered in evidence anymore. The lesson I learned was painfully simple. Family is not a license to steal your peace, your money, your dignity, or your future. Blood can explain a connection, but it cannot excuse cruelty. Love is not proven by how much you sacrifice for people who keep taking. Sometimes love for yourself begins the moment you stop paying the emotional debts they invented. If someone betrays you and then calls your boundaries revenge, let them. If they say you changed, agree with them. Change is what happens when you finally understand your own worth. My mother thought taking $450,000 would make me powerless. Instead, it showed me exactly how powerful I became when I stopped begging dishonest people to love me honestly. And if you have ever been betrayed by someone you were supposed to trust, remember this. Protecting yourself is not selfish. Asking for justice is not cruelty. Walking away from people who only value you when they can use you is not betrayal. It is survival. So tell me honestly, if your own family stole everything you built and then asked for forgiveness only after they got caught, would you forgive them, or would you walk away like I did?